Hey, good morning, everybody. It's Timmy Gibson, former fundamental evangelical tongue talking Holy Ghost rolling pastor. Did that for 30 years. Spent 48 years as an evangelical Christian. I just wanted to do a follow up here. I've talked about that megachurch pastor, Robert Morris from Gateway Church down in Texas. I'll link those videos below here. This is just an update, and it's not even breaking news because I kind of lost track of that story. But I just heard today that Robert Morris has pled guilty to five lewd and lascivious acts with a minor, I think is how it's worded, and was sentenced to 10 years in prison, which he will only serve 6 months of. And then the remaining will be on probation, and then he'll have to register as a sex offender um, for that time too. So I'm curious, what are your thoughts? I go round and round about this kind of thing. Now, please don't jump to the comment section yet. Let me finish here. You're welcome to cuss and discuss below. Um, but I'll be honest. I think when I first made those videos, he was. Um, I came down pretty hard on him. I mean, obviously, I think these things happened back in the late 80s, if I'm not mistaken. There's a lot of other videos out there with probably more details than I might have right now. I had met Robert Morris. I had been to his church. I'd heard him preach. I'd been to a conference down there years ago, back when I was an evangelical pastor. And like I said, I had met him, and he always seemed to me to be kind of arrogant. Um, and that was when I was a Christian, right? So, I mean, that was just, usually I'm a pretty good reader of people. I can kind of pick up on their on their mojo, if you will. And I didn't. He seemed arrogant. That's just how he came across to me. He seemed like he was pretty self-inflated. Thought he was a pretty big deal. I mean, he had security around him, at his church, which maybe he needed that. I don't know, whatever. And he also served on, I think, President Trump's advisory board years ago, before this stuff came out. Anyway, you know, is 6 months in jail long enough for what he did? I think at the time of the essay, he was in his early 20s, I believe. He was married at the time, and he may have even had a newborn. And just to kind of recap the story, just in case you don't know anything about this, and what is this story that Timmy's talking about here? The I forget her name. I knew it, and then all of a sudden it just slipped my mind. All of a sudden, the name of the victim, but she was 12, I believe, at the time, and it had gone on for many years, meaning like 3 or 4 years. It had gone on, and how it all came about is that at the time, Robert Morris was a traveling preacher, what they call an evangelist. I used to be an evangelist. Basically, that's you just travel church to church, wherever, and you preach and do these special services, right? So he was traveling as an evangelist, and one of the churches that he spoke at yearly, that's usually how it works when you're an evangelist. Like there were churches that I would go to every year. Like every year, there was like several churches that always wanted to have me back for a special service, right? And so this was a church that he uh, would go to yearly to preach. And oftentimes, when you're an evangelist, you stay in a host home. It's for a lot of reasons. One is to save money. Um, I think for the church, they don't have to put you up in an expensive hotel or something. So anyway, there was a host home that offered their home up to this traveling evangelist, Robert Morris, and they had a 12-year-old daughter, and he began to be inappropriate with her at that time, and every year he'd come back, or he might have even come back multiple times per year. I don't know all the details of how often he actually spoke at this particular church, but um, every time he came in town to speak at the church, he was then inappropriate with this minor, right? I guess it took her years and years and years and years and years to ever come out about it and to tell her family about it. Like many years, like a decade or two. I mean, it was quite a few years. Now she's like 55, I believe, and finally decided to tell her whole story and out um, Robert Morris, which is I'm glad she did. I don't know. I don't know what would have been different. Again, custom discuss below. What are your thoughts here? Had she come out immediately way back when, would the punishment have been more severe? Right? I don't know. I don't know. I don't know. I don't know much about our justice system completely, and especially going back into the 80s. Would he have been put in prison for a certain amount of time? I just don't know. I guess what I'm trying to get at here, the reason I say I'm conflicted a little bit, and I'm kind of conflicted on is 6 months long enough? And was 10, would you have expected him to be put away for 10 years? And again, that's why I want you to custom discuss below. I know everybody might have a different perspective. Some are more harsh on what they think the punishment should be. Some are a little bit more grace-filled. Take into an account that as far as we know, he had reflected publicly. Now, he didn't tell the whole truth, right? He said he was inappropriate with a young lady back in his early 20s. Okay, Mr. Morris, not a young lady, a child. So there's that, right? That's the despicable part. And this is what I talk about so often as why I think evangelical Christianity is so immoral. I'll tag that video down below here too, because I think if you haven't seen that video that I've done, it's one of my most popular videos actually. What I find so despicable about evangelical Christianity and that belief system, which is just, I'll give you the short cliff notes. It's in the Christian world, when you sin, that's a made up religious word, but let's just go with it for a minute. When you sin and you confess your sin to God, God absolves you of your sin, right? Forgives you of your sin, washes those sins away. Okay, that's the whole story of Jesus dying on a cross for our sins, right? He died on the cross, paid the penalty through death for our sin. Okay, it's a myth. It's all made up. It's not true. It's not real. None of that's real. Okay, again, I'm playing along with this belief system, and the reason I find it so immoral is there's this part that you can do wrong as a Christian and just ask God to forgive you because you feel guilty, right? I shouldn't have done that. And he was definitely dealing with guilt throughout his life over what he did. Though, right, can people change? Can people grow and learn and be better? Okay. I'm of the mindset, I've always said I don't believe people can change, but I believe they can grow, right? I have friends that are recovering addicts and they've gone years and years and years and have stayed clean, right? So, should they pay the price for their previous sins or wrongdoing forever, or should there be some forgiveness or some grace or some penance or something to where, like, should all of us be held accountable for every bad thing we've done? I when I was a teenager, I did some crazy things, not like that, but I did crazy things, right? I stole a car when I was 18, and I never got caught doing that. And, I definitely was a little troublemaker. I stole from grocery stores, stole packs of gum and, you know what I mean? I stole alcohol from my friends' parents, liquor cabinet. I did those things. I think that most of you, unless you're just a really good goody two shoe, and that's awesome. I just never really was a little goody two shoe. I was a little normal teenager that was into riffraff from time to time, right? Obviously, he was 21 or 22, 23. He was in his young 20s somewhere. So clearly not a teenager, clearly not, can't use that as an excuse of what was going on, not to mention he was a grown adult with a child. So, I, I get it. Um, but should he be put away forever? Is that worthy of a life sentence? Is that worthy of the rest of his life? I don't know how old he is. I'm guessing he's in his 60s, I'm assuming, because if she was 12 and he was in his 20s, so yeah, he's probably 10 plus years older than she is. So I don't know. Again, cousin discuss below. I'm very curious. I just don't know what I think totally in the sense of, should he have gotten more than 6 months? There's a part of me that kind of feels like, yeah, right. I'm sure 6 months in jail is not awesome by any stretch. You know, I had a friend that got put in jail, a member of my church back in the day. He was falsely accused and ended up, once the trial came around, he was completely exonerated, but he spent a year behind bars. And man, I've talked to him a lot about that. In fact, I need to probably have him on the show to talk about it. Though he's still a Christian, but he and I are good friends, and he knows where I'm at, and he's pretty open minded, but he's also, he's an evangelical Christian still, which nothing wrong with that. I'm just saying, his perspectives and his ideas might not really be conducive for what I do here. Let me finish my thought earlier about why I think Christianity is immoral. Like I said, I'll link the video below, and I'll link some of the other ones that I've done about this Robert Morris guy. The reason I think it's so immoral is that, and I heard an evangelical preacher say this one time. He said, I confessed my sins to God. There's no reason for me to ever tell anybody else about it because those sins have been washed away. In other words, like, he's innocent now. And I'm like, yeah, but you're not, right? Like if you did such and such a thing, you're still guilty of it, regardless if you've confessed it to God, right? That's I guess, I don't believe in God. Obviously, I'm an atheist, but that's between you and God, your imaginary friend, which is just in your own head, your own mind. Can you change, or can you grow? Can you learn from that? Can you say, man, I would never do that again? So, it seems like, and hopefully I'm not trying to be too full of grace here, but he had many years to reflect back on these terrible things that he did, and I'm sure they haunted him, and he was, probably somewhat punishing himself, though he was never fully honest, right? Like he was never fully honest. Like I said, young lady is a lot different than a child. So yeah, I don't know. I don't know. I can't presume to know what's in someone's heart. And again, the fact that he pleaded guilty, if I'm honest, I was glad to hear that. I was glad to hear that he didn't try to just, he did lawyer up, but I'm glad that he didn't lawyer up and try to just wiggle out of it, and get away with his sins, if you will, right? The wages of sin is death. Your sin, be sure your sins will find you out, right? They definitely caught up to him for sure. So I don't know. Do you think he should be in prison longer? Um, like when I think about my own daughter and her in those early years, um, he, he wouldn't be alive. I'm just going to tell you that right now. If that was my daughter, he'd be dead, is what's up with that. Like, I'm just telling you, like, he wouldn't be in existence. He'd already be up in heaven with Jesus, right? You know what I'm saying? Like that's at least that's what you feel, right? As a father, you know, like I would whoop up on somebody, right? Like that's normal. I think most parents, uh, especially fathers. It seems like men are more violent than women, and I'm a very peaceful person. I'm a lover, not a fighter, but you mess with my family and it's going to be a bad day for you, right? So, I just don't know if 6 months is appropriate. Um, but is 10 years appropriate or more appropriate, right? Again, custom discuss below. Let me know your thoughts. So yeah, that's the update on old former mega church pastor Robert Morris, formerly of Gateway Church. When all this stuff came out, he resigned. He stepped away as he should. And I guess one more thing I want to bring up, just because I'm kind of curious what you all think. You, I can see him spending this time in jail and coming out in 6 months and re-entering the ministry in some way, trying to anyway. It's interesting. It's interesting how the church world works. If you seem repentant of your sin and open about it, the church, for the most part, seems to be a pretty forgiving space in the church world, right? If you stay in the church world, right? Like if I was to say, guys, I got saved, I realized that atheism is the devil, I was blinded by the devil, right? I could probably do a YouTube channel that, formerly an atheist, now I'm back to Jesus I come, right? I could probably, probably get a pretty big audience if which that can never happen. Like it's impossible for me to believe unless there was some evidence. There's never going to be any evidence. I don't see, you know what I mean? Like, no one's going to that's just not going to happen. Right. I'm not going to just wake up one day and be like, oh, I feel the Holy Spirit convicting me of my, that's a false world. That's a mythical world. I'm so far away from that at this point. And just like every atheist that I've ever known has ever said, the only thing that could ever get them to believe in God would just be evidence, like some evidence. I heard a comedian the other day. I thought this was just so accurate. And the guy, I forget the guy's name, but he's a freaking hilarious comedian. He's been on Joe Rogan many times. He's so funny. And he said, he kind of opens up the thing going, does anybody still go to church? Because, after we know it's not real, it kind of starts his bit. And he said, it's like, can you imagine if magicians were like Christians? And, if they reached into a hat and pulled out, they say they're going to pull out a rabbit and they reach into the hat and pull it out. And everybody's like, there ain't no rabbit there. And he's like, no, you got to just believe it by faith. Right? He said no one would go see that magician's show, right? That'd be ridiculous. No, at least the magician is producing the rabbit, and so there's something you can see and you're amazed by the trickery of it because you're like, how'd that rabbit come out of that hat? Whereas Christianity is kind of doing the same thing, except they're not pulling anything out of the hat, but saying, "Can you see it? Do you see the rabbit? You got to believe it by faith to see it." It's like that, right? But in that world, it. I wonder. I do wonder if he will be received with open arms, much like the dude from Hillsong, not Carl Lentz, even though that's another one, from Hillsong Church, New York. That guy was shady. He was shady at the get-go. You know what I mean? Like, he was just Justin Bieber's pastor, right? That guy, P. Diddy's pastor. Like, just, he was kind of shady from the get-go. That guy was full of himself, for sure. But maybe he's changed too. Listen, I'm talking about the old stuff. I don't know what Carl Lentz is up to. I don't know. I don't think he's doing ministry stuff. At least I don't think so. Who knows? I don't care. I'm not here to judge nobody, though I just judged him. But you know what I'm saying. I'm just judging him on the facts of what we know and what he's even confessed to or whatever. I don't know, man. I don't know. Obviously, I think Christianity is a complete myth. It's a myth, just like how Christians view all the other religions and all religions from times past. It's just mythology, right? And that's all Christianity is. It's just a mythology. And not saying all Christians are bad. Not all Christians are bad. Definitely, there's some really good Christians out there, which is interesting because I think even the good Christians, if they weren't Christians, they would still be good people. I mean, I think that's the truth, right? I think that's just accurate, right? I know I've said this before. I've done a whole video on it. That I at the time when I was a Christian believed that if I wasn't a Christian, that I would be bad. And here I am, not a Christian, and it's like, oh wow, like I'm actually a better person, more authentic, more honest. Yeah, I'm just I'm just a different person in that way. The basis of me is the same. But leaving Christianity was the best thing I ever did. For me. Okay. Yeah, I don't know. We'll see, right? Time will tell. We'll see how this video does in the future. What Robert Morris will do. Will he come back and get amongst all the Christians and talk about how God spoke to him in prison and while he was laying in his bed in jail, and how God revealed to him this and that and the other? And probably that would be my guess, honestly. Will he ever get back to the place that he was? He had a mega church, like 20,000 people, I think. I mean, it was mega. He had like a very influential church. Like, this guy, he was a mega church pastor. Like, he ran with all the big time preachers. He was friends with all the big time preachers. You name them, man. All the big time preachers. He's just one of those. He was one of those. And most preachers want to be in that crowd. They want to be, most at least most of the ones I knew. All when I was a preacher, I wanted to be a big famous TV preacher. I did. That's just the truth. I wanted to be a Joel Osteen with tattoos, right? Like an edgy Joel Osteen, not a suit wearing, political looking preacher. I wanted to be me, but whatever. And then I realized, wait, this ain't true. So I can't keep spreading these lies. It ain't real. I don't know, man. Will he come back? I just don't know. What do you think? Cuss and discuss below. What do you think? Do you think he'll come back? He'll try to come back? Do you think the Christian group will embrace him? I think they might. Especially if he's still Christian, right? That the reason I'm not embraced by Christians is because I'm not Christian. You know what I mean? Like, I just, like, Christianity is a cult. Like, we all on this channel know that. Like, Christianity is a cult. And the cult welcomes you back if you agree to the tenets of the cult. Like that, I mean, so like you can leave a cult, but then you can say, I made a mistake and I was wrong and I believe all that stuff. And you can get back in, right? So I think there's a good chance he may come back on the scene. I was reflecting, actually, I was thinking about other people that have had big falls, if their fall from grace, and they've come back. You know, the Hillsong guy, he's not Carl Lentz, but the head guy. His name is skipping my mind right now, but the kind of the almost the founder, or at least his father was the founder of Hillsong way back in the day. Um, you know, he's still out preaching. I've seen him at churches of people I know that passed. Like I've known that he's speaking there and things like that. So he's kind of back on the preaching circuit. And there's a lot of money in it. There is. There's a lot of money in it. Um, in that closed little tight knit cult, there's a lot of money in there. Yeah, so I don't know. You know, will he come back? It's very possible. But you know, Jimmy Swaggart, back in the '80s, this is when I was in high school. You know, Jimmy Swaggart was caught with a prostitute. He preached against that, but he himself was partaking of the delicacies of a prostitute, and you know, got caught many times. I think the first time he was caught, I think their people just loved him so much, and they were willing to give him some grace. That see, he's human, and all the guys in the church were like, he has the same weakness I have, you know, for them prostitutes. So, you know, uh, and then he came back, not at the level he was though. You know, he didn't come back as the Jimmy Swaggart that we all once knew of back then. Same with Jim Baker, you know, the Jim and Tammy Faye Baker group of the people. Uh, you know, Jim Baker went to prison for a while, and you know he's got a TV show, and I mean he's a total crook. He's a total nutball. You know, I don't know, man. I just don't know. I don't know. I don't know. Anyway, I just kind of want to come on here and just kind of shoot the shit with you and get your. I'm curious what you guys think. You know, what's up? Uh, I don't know. My vote, you know, not my vote, but my opinion. It's not my vote. My opinion is that he probably will reinvent himself, and this will be like an identifying feature of his new shtick. That's what I think. I think that he'll get out of jail in 6 months and be a changed man. So, I don't know how all that works in I'm not a psychiatrist, you know. So I know, people can be born psychopathic, or what's the word, like a psychopath, or you can be born a narcissist, or do you become a narcissist, or are you born a narcissist? Are you born a pedophile, or you become a pedophile? I don't know. I think it's nature and nurture, probably would be my guess. Again, if you're a professional, please do tell us. Do tell me, help me. I only know enough to just kind of ask, really. I think all the research that I've done, and all the things that I've watched in documentaries on, serial killers, and all the different things that go on out there, that some people are born without empathy. you know um Thank goodness gracious I was born with empathy. I feel bad if I hit a squirrel on the road. I mean, it nearly tears me up when I hit a squirrel and he was just trying to get food for his little kids. Like that kind of. That's why I don't hunt. I'm not a hunter, because I don't need to. I can just go to the grocery store and buy whatever I want, right? So I don't need to hunt. But I did go hunting when I was 15, 16, 17, somewhere in there. I went on a hunting trip with for quail with my grandpa. who's passed, and then my dad. And the sport of it, it was fun. I loved the time together, and I loved walking through the woods and the excitement of when the birds would float up, you know, like it was fun, right? And then we cleaned and cooked and ate that, right? So it wasn't like we were just shooting for fun. I mean, we did eat that stuff. Which I eat meat now, so I mean I'm still doing that stuff. And forgive me, all you vegans. I was a vegan, vegetarian more for 12 years, so I lived that life. Um, so yeah, I don't hunt now just because I just can't imagine shooting something, honestly. Uh, I mean, just for me personally. Again, no judgment on anybody that likes to hunt. I think it's totally fine. I don't have an opinion on it. It's just I just can't do it, especially little Bambi. Like seriously, I had a friend. I mean, I'll definitely eat venison, but uh, but I just can't. I just can't personally. I just can't do it. Now, if we had some cataclysmic event, I could. Like I could actually very easily, if it was for my survival, I could hunt, I could fish, I could learn how to clean, I could dice all that stuff up and put it on the grill. No problem at all. But that's just it. I don't have to do that now. So I just don't, I have other things that I'm involved, that I do for sport, and other things that I have for hobbies. Hunting's not one of them. How did I get off on that? Anyway, yeah. So will he come back? Will he be accepted? I think that he probably will. But what do you think? You know, uh, as an atheist, I don't think like every atheist. I've seen many atheist channels, and most of them seem great to me or whatever. But uh, I don't agree with every atheist. I don't have. I think that's why some of you really like me, is I'm a little bit. Um, I don't know what I am. I would consider myself a very rational, logical person, and can view those, I can kind of juggle both sides, which I'm going to do a video here shortly just about how Christians are so weird about Halloween. But then sometimes atheists are weird about Christmas. I'm going to talk about that in another video. I don't know. I'm kind of like it's like I really try to I don't know. I try to be fair. I try to be, not be just radicalized on anything. Um, Obviously, I'm radicalized as it relates to there is no God. Um, because there's just no evidence for it. I really don't feel like that's a radical. I know to a Christian that seems radical, but it's like look around. Clearly, there's no God. So, like, how is that radical? To me, to believe in God is radical, right? I mean, to me, that seems irrational to believe in God. Now, if there was some evidence, if there were things that you could really look at, then it might not be so irrational to believe in God. All right, so I don't know. That's why this video is not coming out on my normal Sunday or Wednesday, just because I just kind of wanted to see what you guys thought um, about the Robert Morris verdict, or whatever that's called. He pleaded guilty, and his sentence. And what do you think? Should it be longer? Should it be shorter? Can people grow? Can they change? Back to that thing, and I'll bring this to an end. I just don't know if people are born, and I guess they could be, right? I guess you could be born, just like you can be born with physical things wrong. I guess you could be born with mental things wrong, right? Right? So, could you be born with some wiring screwed up in your head to make you, want to hurt somebody? Or, um, yeah, I've watched enough crime documentaries on uh, every streaming channel there is, to know that people like, Ted Bundy and the BTK killer and all these different people, they said they just had this overwhelming desire to kill. And I was like, whoa, you know, um, that's just wild, right? Like, that's just wild. I've just personally never experienced that outside of the normal, the thought of someone trying to hurt me or hurt my family. Then I do have like an overwhelming desire to protect my family by whatever means necessary. Outside of that, I think that's fairly normal, right? It's fight or flight. I think depending on the situation, flight might be the best, but on some other occasion, fighting might be the best, right? It just depends. It just depends on what the situation is. But to be born and not you're not in it, and you're not trying to protect anybody. You just have this overwhelming desire to do something bad. I can tell you this: I did struggle with a lot of desires to do things bad when I was a Christian, but they were things that now I realize they're not bad, like masturbation or to have premarital sex, like all those things. I thought then at the time when I was a Christian, those are bad. That's bad. What's wrong with me? Why am I such a bad sinner? Why do I want to do all these evil things? Well, those things aren't immoral. That's just what the church has labeled as sin, but they're not immoral to touch yourself and to want to engage in sexual activity with what, I mean, like, so I understand at least the idea of wanting to do something. You feel like you want to do something, like as soon as I went through the puberty stage, like all I could think about were girls, right? I just couldn't get my mind off of it. I just wanted to be with girls, so, but I was always raised in the church world. So for me, I was supposed to deny my flesh. I was supposed to fight that urge to want to be sexually active. And so that was what was causing my turmoil. So, I can't imagine for those that are born with wanting to hurt someone, if that's inside them, like they're wanting to do bad things, be criminals. Yeah, so I don't know. I'm sure it's both, right? I'm sure you can be born a little off in that way, and then your nurture makes it worse. I would gather, like, in just like this thought is just coming to me right this second. I would imagine there are people who might even be watching this right now, and you have a desire to do things, but they're wrong, so you don't do them. Right? There was a a crime series thing a documentary that I just watched. I think it was like a 48 hours. And there was this guy that had committed a murder back in his early 20s, I think. And it was some 30 years later, because of DNA advances in DNA testing, that he finally got caught. And he came clean. He said that he did it, and he said that he did it in his young 20s, and then he got married when he was like 25, 26, and then he had kids. And he said his relationship with his wife and his kids, his family, is the only reason that he never did kill again. That he said that he still had the desire-ish, but he said, there was so much to live for, and he loved his wife and his kids so much, he never leaned into that at all. And this is in his own words. I thought this was fascinating. He said that, I was born a serial killer, but I only killed one person. And again, this is just what he said. And that his relationship with his wife and his community and his kids and all that are what really kept him from ever doing it again. And he knew one day, most likely, he would get caught. So I don't know. It's very fascinating. Anyway, I was going to say is there might be people out there right now that are capable of doing that or have a desire to do that, and they don't for whatever reason, um, that's fascinating to me. Very fascinating, right? And interestingly enough, right? Like we know, um, serial killers aren't atheists exclusively, or they're not Christian exclusively either, right? But I mean, many of them are church going, like religious people, and God didn't help them, right? I mean, the BTK killer, the guy out of Topeka, Kansas. I mean, he was a like a family man, married, kids, involved in his church, believed in God and all the stuff. But then he had this dark secret. I don't know, man. It's just wild. That stuff's just very wild to me. So, and this all relates to Robert Morris. He what we used to say in the religious world. When I was in the religious world, we would say, "I have my demons." That's what we'd always say, right? That's a way of separating yourself from these things that you want to do that aren't good. And so, yeah, I would assume that Robert Morris struggled with these demons, as in his words, I'm sure, and didn't want to do those things, but had this overwhelming desire to do those things, and wasn't able to stop himself from doing it. Almost like an addiction, almost like drugs. It's like that's something that's always been, again, surprising to me, just as a person that I really am not an addictive type person. I tried smoking, and I smoked for a while. Then I was like, this is stupid. I don't like smelling like smoke, and I just quit. Right, like, um, and I've done the nicotine pouches, as you guys know. I've talked about them. I do the Alps. I think it's an American lip pillow is what that stands for. And I use it. I use those nicotine pouches still on occasion, but also like I quit and I just stopped doing it. And I'll stop for about a month, and then I'm like, okay, I'll use them again now sporadically, right? So I don't know if I'm just lucky. I don't know if people are wired different than other people. Some people are more given to addiction. I have a good friend of mine that's very given to addiction. He can't just have one drink, and that's very shocking to me. Just because I can have a drink, or I can just not drink for several months if I don't want. You know what I mean? And I don't say that like, oh, great me. I'm just saying that's just me. But my friend is a very good dude. He can't. He can't have one drink. In fact, if he's around it, he has this compulsion to want it. So, I don't know, man. I just don't know. I would imagine there are people that really struggle, regardless of whatever they are religiously. That I don't really think that has much to do with any of that, right? It's not like only non-believers are ever guilty of committing any kind of crimes. Again, that would be, to me, that would be some evidence, right? If crimes were only committed by the quote unquote godless, well, that would be curious. If people in church never did anything wrong, that would be kind of like proof that whether it's proof of a placebo, having a make believe God that's watching over you is keeping you good, then okay, then those people should have that belief. And then there's other people that like, I guess, like myself, which is, there's no God watching me. I'm watching me. I'm accountable to myself. I don't want to do those things because I don't want to hurt people, right? And even for many of my friends, we've talked about this. It's like I don't do things because I don't want to go to jail, right? Like I don't do that because I don't want to do that. You know what I mean? Like I don't want to knock over a Quick Trip. I don't want to hurt somebody. Like I just don't have that desire. Um, but man, my heart actually kind of goes out to people that were born with those crossed wires and do want to hurt people. They say kids that hurt animals. That's kind of not a good sign. If your kid is torturing animals and can hurt animals, especially even people that don't like cats. I've never been a big cat fan. I have a cat now because of my wife, and I love it. She's a little precious kitty. I would never want to hurt her. When I hear stories about kids torturing cats or, throwing firecrackers at them and stuff, like, I just don't like that. Doesn't compute in my brain. I'm like, why would you want to hurt a cat? Right? Like, and I don't believe in hell. So it's not like it's like, why would you want to do something like that, even if you would never get caught? See, that's the thing, right? Like if you knew you would never get caught, if it was for certain you would never get caught, and you would do something bad, that's fucked up, right? Like if you're only not doing it because you don't want to get caught, or you don't want to go to hell, or you don't want to displease God, like that's just fucked up to me. To me, that just seems fucked up. One of the criticisms that Christians often say to those like myself, atheist, is, you just want to be free to sin. It's like, what? Like, I just want to be free, especially when I was single and in Bible college, so I just want to be free without guilt to masturbate. We're all masturbating already anyway, but we're just doing it with guilt afterwards. It's a nutty thing. It really is a nutty thing. Anyway, cuss and discuss down below. I do have a Facebook group if you want to be a part of our community. It's called Timmy's Deconstruction Community. It's for atheists, agnostics, those going through the deconstruction process. We'd love to have you in the group. It's a bunch of fun. It's a good community. And man, we got people from all over the world in this group, man. Like literally all over the world in this group. It's freaking fascinating. So, if you want to meet people from all around the world that think kind of like you, or are having questions like you, jump in it. And there's actually quite a few people in the States. So, maybe you'll just so happen to find someone in your community. Maybe we get this group so big, I can go on tour and come to coffee houses all around the country, all around the world, and talk and do that. That'd be really cool. That would be cool. That's a long-term goal for me, would be to, say, hey guys, I'm coming to New York City to this particular coffee shop, and we're going to talk. That'd be cool. All right, guys. Appreciate you big time. Be kind. See ya.